welcome back. I hope that you've had a wonderful break and that you are well and your friends and family are all safe. I have very much missed teaching you, and I hope there is a part of you that has missed learning too. So this is what we did last lesson, so this should be completely recognised by every single one of you. So this is just showing the transition from the short run to the long run in a monopolistic market. So what we're going to look at today is whether this is true, whether this is realistic, whether this actually happens in reality. Everything that we've learned up until now, from when we kind of broke up, even before then to now, has had a look at completely theoretical markets. And whilst that's been incredibly interesting, I hope, it may well not be the reality of what we see today. In fact, it's absolutely not the reality of what we see today. It's not what we see from those kind of corner shops or the hairdressers or the bakers that we see. So we're going to have a look at, actually, is that true? What is the reality? When we look at the short run into the long run, in macroeconomics, that's really simple, really clear cut, and it's really obvious. We know that there are some very clear rules of short run to long run to do with factors of production. So obviously in the long run, the factors of production are variable. That's the classical model and the Keynesian model. It's not always so true. Actually, you can have a factor of production that's fixed and still be in the long run sticky prices, you know, kind of menu prices, firms are getting price signals, things like that. But in microeconomics, it's kind of less, even more so clear-cut than that. And actually, monopolistic competition, we see that a lot, that actually this idea of the long run and the short run is actually very fluid. And firms can kind of shift from the short run to the long run and back again, and they have ways that they can very much kind of stop themselves getting from the short run to the long run, or kind of stop themselves from making normal profit or go back to making supernormal profit. And we're going to have a look at that today. Thinking about the idea of theory and reality, kind of relating that to the exam, just really to reinforce to you when we're learning this, actually where that fits in. So we know that in the exam you've got analysis and you've got evaluation. Now I always have said, and very much stand by, the idea that your analysis really needs to be kind of clear-cut economic theory. So ceteris paribus, you've been asked about this, and this is the reality of that situation. So monopolistic competition, this is what's going to happen. In theory, this is what's going to happen. And then our evaluation is actually about the reality. So it's actually about when we remove that ceteris paribus, when we look at what we see for ourselves in the economy, is that actually always true? Does that theory always hold? Can we add something to it? What is the reality? What are the flaws in the theory that we've learned? That's what we use for our evaluation. So that's kind of what we're going to look at today. So the first thing that we're going to look at is kind of this idea of a stable equilibrium. We know that it's definitely not a stable equilibrium, and we're going to spend some time looking at 4 ways that firms kind of hoard off that stable long-run equilibrium of normal profits only. So the first one that I want you to think about, you're going to pause the video and have a go at thinking about advertising. So we know that small firms will advertise, your local bakery will advertise, your local hairdressers, or most hairdressers, will advertise, and what effects that might have. So what I'd like you to do is to think about what effect advertising might have on that long-run equilibrium, and what that diagram is going to look like after a firm has used maybe some of that supernormal profit to make advertising kind of in their local area. So pause the video and have a go at drawing that diagram, and then we'll see if you've got the same as me. Okay. So this is what you should have. I hope that you have. Don't worry, I'm going to go through it. So there's 2 different diagrams on here. This bottom diagram is what I want to go through first. So if you struggled with this, here's just a couple of tips of how you can do it. So what I thought would be useful for us to have a look at first is actually the firm's supply and demand diagram. It's not the industry supply and demand diagram, it's the firm's supply and demand diagram. Remember, the industry could look very differently. So we have a downward sloping demand and a upward sloping supply. And that increase in advertising, or the introduction of advertising, has actually shifted out this demand curve. So what we've seen from that is an increase in our price here, and our increase in our quantity demanded over here as well. So once we know this, once we've had this little here, and don't ever feel ashamed of kind of quickly drawing a diagram like this in the exam, so you can see whether it's the supply or whether it's the demand that's actually changed. because we see here that the demand has changed, but actually the supply has just extended to kind of accommodate that change in demand. And then you can get onto drawing this one, which will help you then see whether it's AR and MR that needs to move, or whether it's the AC or the MC that needs to move. Because our demand has shifted out, actually it's our AR and MR that has shifted out here, so we can see that our MR has shifted from here to here and our AR has shifted from here to here. And then obviously what's happened is our supernormal profit position has changed. So we're now operating here. This is our new supernormal profit position, well, it's our new profit maximising position even. So we actually have a new quantity, and we can see that this is reflected here with this shift out here. And then because we've got a new profit maximising quantity, if we go up here, we actually have a new price point, which is higher than our old price point, which is also mirrored here to here. So we can see that actually drawing a small diagram may well help you in the exam to make sure you get this diagram right. My advice is always draw the original diagram first, and then draw all your changes, because if you draw your change first, you'll confuse yourself, you might get your profit maximising position mixed up, and that's absolutely not what we want at all. So hopefully you got this. The next one we're going to have a go at together, so if you didn't really get this one, you might want to have a go at the next one together and then come back to this one, see if you kind of understand it. So the next one, we'll have a look at the second way that I thought that firms can kind of introduce the idea of supernormal profit, is when they're making supernormal profit in the short run, they may decide to invest some of that supernormal profit into cost saving measures. So they may well choose to not advertise, they may well choose to do something else instead, which is basically invest in something that means that at the same price they are able to produce more. So actually what they're doing is, rather than affecting that demand curve, they're actually affecting that supply curve. So what they're doing is they're actually, rather than shifting this demand curve out, remember this is the firms, not the industry, they're actually shifting their supply curve outwards. Right? So there are many different ways that a firm can do that. And one of the ways I want us to think about is maybe looking at, for a small bakery, we know they're very monopolistic market structures, and maybe they might want to invest in some new industrial machinery that means that they can produce far more efficiently. Now, because they've been invested into some new machinery, actually what they're doing is reducing their marginal costs, right? So their marginal cost will fall here. Now, if a firm's marginal cost falls, then obviously their average cost will also fall. Now, that's not true the other way around. So, for instance, if a firm decides to invest in or try and negotiate something to do with their fixed costs, so for instance, it may well be some rent to lower their rent, well, that might be just the AC there. And if that happens, then your profit maximising position actually doesn't change. But because this here, we're investing into new machinery, it does change the marginal cost, and therefore we do have a new profit maximising position, which is here, quantity P, so that's shifted out, which is exactly what we see here. So this is so far reflecting that. And then we go up to here and all the way across, and our price has fallen, which again is represented here. So this is a good way for you to kind of check to make sure that you are right. And then we see that actually because of that, the firm is making some supernormal profits here. So they don't have to advertise, they don't have to invest in ways to kind of not manipulate the consumer, but to tap into irrational consumer behaviour. Actually, they can do some things within their own firm to mean that they are creating some supernormal profit and actually lowering their prices for consumers. We will have a look at this later on, but it is important to note that actually if we just moved the average cost, our price wouldn't change because our profit maximising position is still the same, but because we've moved our MC, actually our profit maximising position does also change. So let's just check, our price has gone down, yes, and our quantity has increased, which we can see here as well. So yes, we've kind of done that correct, really good way to check yourself. the last, the second to last one that we're going to have a look at is to invest into new products. So investing into new products, what does that mean? So a firm might take that supernormal profit and start investing into something completely different. So if we use that kind of bakery analogy again, maybe a bakery might decide to invest in a different kind of cultures, products. So the bakery at the end of our road was doing very well, and they opened a new bakery that just does kind of South American desserts, delicious. So they may decide to invest in new products. What does that do for this diagram here? So I suggest you kind of pause and have a go at doing it, and then we'll go through it together. Use that supply and demand for the firm to kind of see which you're going to change first. Really good way to check yourself, and then we'll go through it together. So let's have a look at this little mini firms, supply and demand. So again, when you're doing this, this doesn't have to be accurate. We know that actually this should be very elastic and this should be very, but it doesn't matter because you're just doing it roughly to kind of check yourself. So don't worry too much about it. So let me think, if a firm decides to invest in new products, is that going to affect supply or is that going to affect demand? It's going to affect demand. So we're going to see demand shifting out here. So from our original, we're going to see demand shifting out and we're going to see our price equilibrium increase. So that's exactly what we did in the first one again. So we're just going to see here our AR and our MR. Again, with this, the original diagram first, I made my changes, and now we're going to look at what happens because of that. So do what you know and then find out the effects of what you've done. So here, look, we've got a new profit maximizing quantity, and we see our quantity has increased, reflected here, so well done. Then we go up here, all the way across, we've got a new price, yes, well done. And then here we can see that we've actually making some supernormal profit there. Here's our supernormal profit. So now the firm is able to make supernormal profit because they've invested into new products. We see this happening all the time. Even your corner shop might get some new kind of variety or new products. It might be that your bakery starts doing, like mine, doing some kind of new desserts or deliveries or something like that. Or it may well be that your kind of hairdresser starts doing some different methods, some different things. So the last one we're going to have a look at is slightly different. I really implore you to have a go at doing this before. There are a couple of options that you can take with this that I will, be quite lenient about. So relationship building. This happens all the time. So relationship building allows us to tap into irrational consumer behaviour. So what happens is that your local corner shop or your local coffee shop or your local bakery just gets to know you. Right? And then a new bakery opens up and you're not going to leave because not only do you like the products at your bakery, but you also like having a chat with the person who runs it. You like having a chat with the person who works there. Maybe they know you. My coffee shop at the end of the road, I walk in, they know my order. I don't even need to order. They just get it done, put it there, ready to go. I can skip the queue. So when they know you, if there's a new coffee shop that opened up in my area, I wouldn't go. I'm going to go to my coffee shop because they know me, because they chat to me, because I don't have to kind of wait, it's more efficient, and also I like them, I just really like them, they're really nice. So what I would like you to do is think about what that means for the firm, right? Now I purposely haven't drawn any kind of more of this diagram, so think about that, and then so take a pause, have a go at the diagram, and then we'll come back and have a look at some of the things that you could have done. Okay. So, there are two diagrams that you could have drawn that I will give you 4 points for. So the first one is that actually what happens is that a firm just never goes to the long run, right? So a firm just constantly stays in the short run. So the firm doesn't actually move into the long run at all. So I can explain that with kind of a bit more detail here. So a new coffee shop opens and the kind of coffee shop that I go to every morning, I know them well, they know me well, we know each other, I know all about them and their family. So the new coffee shop opens and I just never go, right? So I never decide to go to that new coffee shop. So what does that mean? That means that the AR and the MR never shifted in the first place, right? So it doesn't change. I've got a new colour now. I dropped the other one. So I'm going to do the exact same thing here. Across, so I know for a fact that they're still making supernormal profit because they just never went to the long run. So therefore, this is just going to stay like this, and actually, they're making supernormal profit. So that alone I would have been happy with that. Some of you might have done that. Fantastic if you did. Well done. Now the other one that I would have accepted, and I think would have been really smart for you to say, is about elasticity of demand. So actually what might have happened is at the same price point, the elasticity of demand might have changed. So instead of it being very elastic, instead of this AR being incredibly elastic, actually what might have happened is the AR and then therefore the MR might have become more elastic and therefore some supernormal profit might have happened. So just to kind of, I'll draw just a quick supply and demand diagram for you here. So actually what's happened is, at the same price point, the demand curve has just become more inelastic. I'm unwilling to change, right? So the coffee shop at the end of my road could change their prices, they could become more expensive, and I would still stick with them because I really like them. So actually what's happened is this elasticity of demand has kind of become more inelastic. What does that look like on this diagram? Let me draw it very quickly for you here. So exactly the same as before. I'm going to draw the original diagram first. Always draw your original diagram first. So we've got our average revenue, we've got our marginal revenue, we've got our marginal cost. Again, I'm going to find this first. Go across. It's the short run, no, it's the long run actually. So I'm going to draw it with normal profits. So I'm going to draw it with normal profits. I mean, it's a bit dodgy, but it's fine. And actually what happens is it becomes slightly more inelastic. So at the same price point, it's going to become more inelastic. So therefore we're going to see this. So a lot of you have asked me before, can your MRs cross? Yes, they can. That's not a problem because you're actually drawing one diagram almost on top of another one. But you need to make sure that you're drawing your supernormal profits or finding your normal profits, finding your profit maximizing position, your revenue maximizing position, whatever it is that you're trying to find, you need to make sure that you're just taking your time to make sure that that is accurate. So here I have a slightly different quantity position, and then I go up, and actually we can see here that I've made some supernormal profit here. So we've had a change in elasticity. Now either one of these would be correct, that's absolutely fine. So what I would like you to do is to think about some other ways that a firm can kind of ward off the long run and stay making that supernormal profit, or if they get to that normal profit position, how can they kind of change to make sure that they go back to the short run and make some more supernormal profit? What is it that they can do to kind of warn that off and make sure that they're keeping within that kind of pocket of profit? So next lesson, we're going to have a look at some of the exam questions, and we're going to have a look at what we can apply this in the exam, both in the section A but also section B as well. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you had a great lesson. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you so much, and bye.